You've landed here because you or somebody you love suffers from anxiety. And in this video, I'm going to talk about all the ways that my anxiety has presented itself to the world so you can better understand yourself or the person that you know that suffers from anxiety. Firstly, if you're new here, my channel is all about how I live my best life in spite of some of the ways that I feel. I explore all things mental health and well-being and look at different things that are in the media or different things that I've struggled with to help us have a better understanding and open the conversation around mental health. If that feels like something of interest to you, then please remember to subscribe and hit the notifications so you know every time I release a new video. So today I'm going to give you 10 ways that anxiety has presented itself in my world. It doesn't always come across in the conventional way that anxiety is viewed, and that can make it difficult. And so within these 10 reasons, I'm going to help you to understand some of your reactions to the world and how they might be linked to anxiety. And I've left the biggest, most important one that I think everybody that struggles with anxiety gets. I've left that to the end because it's most important, so make sure you stick around for number 10. So the first one I'm looking at is isolating. For me, I've done this quite a lot in my time. When I feel anxious, I don't want to be around people. I get deeply concerned about what people are thinking about me. And anxiety tells me that you can see inside my mind. So I quite often will like to disappear on my own and sit maybe with a book or in front of the TV away from everyone. A good point to make about this is that people will often try and stop people isolating and say you need to get out more and try and get away from that. And there's something to be said for that. But also, self-care and self-love for me can sometimes look like that isolation. Sometimes the anxiety gets too much for me and I need that isolation, so I need to be removed. So it's not always a bad thing. If it starts to imprison you and entrap you, then it's a problem. But I do allow myself that space to come away because being around people can be tireless when you've got anxiety. Number 2 contradicts number 1, okay? And it's restlessness. And sometimes that can present itself as like this need to be out and be around people, you know, that fear of missing out. I feel really, really anxious and like something bad's gonna happen, so I need to be around people to make sure I don't miss it. And like I say, this is the thing about mental health and well-being in general. They often contradict themselves. But restlessness is a way that anxiety has shown up in my life for me. And sometimes it can be like like my body's rattling a little bit and I can't keep still and I'm up and I'm moving all the time. That was certainly true for me in school. I found it very difficult to sit down throughout lessons, and it can be the same in my working life. A day in the office can become very difficult for me if anxiety sets in. I need to be on the go sometimes. Another one is eating, right? And I'm saying eating in general because sometimes for me it's not eating and it's going long periods of time without eating to give me a sense of control and a feeling of control. And then sometimes my anxiety can feel like this deep need to eat, and I will eat, and sugar's one that I'll escape into. But eating in general, just to come away from the ways that I'm feeling, is another way that anxiety presents itself to me in my life. Which leads nicely on to the next one, which is addiction. When I'm talking about addiction, I mean addiction as a whole spectrum, right? So I'm not just talking about substance addiction, I'm talking about addiction in general. Addiction to gaming is a big one. Food, we've mentioned. But drink and drugs are obviously a big one. Mobile phones are a massive one in today's world. People are disappearing into, you know, Candy Crush was big for a while, and people always look at the symptom like it's the problem, but often that addiction comes from a place of escaping the ways that we feel. And for me, that is often, more often than not, a place of anxiety. I used to actually call, when I had a problem with alcohol, I called anxiety thirst, because I associated that anxiety feeling with a need to drink, right? And that was because it became synonymous. Drinking became synonymous with my escape, and so I associated the two so closely. I thought my anxiety was thirst for alcohol. Next one is attention seeking. Now, people wouldn't often link this to anxiety, but I know certainly for me when I was younger, and in social situations for me today, I will start to act a clown, I'll start to act silly and seek attention. And it's kind of my way, again, this is to do with control, of trying to control the ways that I feel. You know, again, I've mentioned before that anxiety makes me think that you can see how I feel. So I'll start acting stupid and trying to gain control of the situation to escape the ways that I feel. Another one that people may have linked before, but is headaches. I get terrible headaches. headaches when I'm nervous, worried and anxious. I will notice how anxious I am by the fact that I've started to get a headache, and that will be what the way that it presents itself to me first, and then I realise, I'm worried about something, I'm nervous about something. And I suffered with headaches all my life. They were never ever linked with anxiety. This is something that I found myself, but I recognise today that headaches are a massive symptom of anxiety for me, and they're very, very obviously linked in my life. Another one is appetite and toilet habits. Now, I've linked the two of these together because, for me, they're all linked up, right? And this is something else that I don't think is often linked with anxiety, and it's different to what I was talking about earlier in the want to eat and the want to not eat. That's more of a control thing. This is about the feeling in my stomach. Anxiety can present itself terribly within my stomach, and when I'm really anxious, I won't eat at all, and I can go days sometimes with eating barely anything. And then that can link to going to the toilet, right? So I can get quite constipated if I'm really worried, and then if it's a different kind of anxiety and a different kind of worry, then I can find myself on the toilet a lot, right? And weeing, by the way, is big for me. So I wee a lot. Anybody that knows me will know that, and it is anxiety linked, right? When I'm anxious, I get that need to go to the toilet. So difficult one to talk about. That's why I've giggled through it, because I feel silly talking about it. But it's really worth mentioning because it is, hugely linked to anxiety for me, and recognizing that makes me feel it is worth doing. This is one that's not mentioned a lot, and it's, I don't really know how to describe it other than changing your mind a lot or being a little bit of a letdown. But often I will get to the run up to something that I'm actually being really excited to do and that I really want to do and that I'm looking forward to do, and anxiety will take over and I'll pull out. And what I'll do is, rather than just think I'm really, really anxious and I don't want to go, I'll tell myself 1,000,001 different reasons why I can't, and I'll create all these things, and I will come up with ridiculously poor excuses to not do something, and then I won't do it. But I almost convince myself of that sometimes. So if you know somebody that struggles with anxiety, and they seem to let you down a lot and they give you really, really bad excuses, it's not always their fault, and they're not necessarily lying. We convince ourselves of these things sometimes because the truth is too painful to bear, and that is that I'm just really, really anxious and I don't want to go. And the last one, and biggest, most important one, that I still don't think is linked to anxiety enough, but I think it's the main way that anxiety presents itself to the world, and that is anger. When I become anxious at home, or especially around my family, I become agitated, I'm difficult to be around, I become angry. Quite often if we go into busy places, take the kids swimming sometimes and it's really busy in there, and I will get really kind of aggy and angry, and it's because I'm anxious. It makes me deeply anxious, and I really, really struggle with that. And throughout my life I was taught anger management, and people were telling me, if you just need to calm down and you got anger issues and all that kind of stuff, and that was what was presented to the world. But my problem was almost always anxiety, and it's so difficult to deal with that you feel angry, because then it breeds self-hatred and breeds self-loathing, because the way you react to the world is not nice, because you're just angry and you seem bitter and resentful, and it's all linked to anxiety. So if you love someone or know someone that seems angry all the time, it's really worth exploring that might be anxiety. And look, knowing that for me hasn't necessarily made it all better. Anyone that sees me play football will see that when we're losing and I start getting anxious and worried about it, then I find my anger very, very difficult to control. So that's why I've left that one to the end, because it's such a big and important one. People are often ridiculed and given a lot of stick for being angry, and nobody looks at it as a mental health problem or a mental health and well-being struggle. And it absolutely is. And until we address anxiety, especially with young people within the schools, we're going to get these people that are growing up angry. They're angry at themselves and they're angry at the world, and they feel completely misunderstood, and they're justified in feeling misunderstood because nobody's explored that anxiety that they're escaping from and trying to control with their anger. And like I say, it's something I still do today and find very difficult to come away from. Okay, so there you have it. I'm pretty sure that was 10 reasons. I stopped numbering them in the middle because I lost count of them. But look, if you love somebody that struggles with anxiety, sometimes we've got to try our best to be there with them. And it can be hard. And if you're somebody like me who struggles with anxiety, For me, it feels like anxiety is here to stay, but it's about living my best life in spite of that. Remember to give us a like and subscribe and turn on the notifications if you've enjoyed the video today, and I'll see you again soon.